Minecraft is a very static game by nature, which can result in builds feeling a little bit lifeless. But if you look beyond the standard building blocks in this game, you'll find that there's actually a lot of things that can add some movement or activity to a build, thus bringing it to life. We'll start with what I think is one of the best ways to make a build feel more alive: mobs. It's kind of a no-brainer that a moving entity will add movement, but it's more so about how you do it. One of the best mobs to do this with is, of course, villagers. This doesn't necessarily mean you need to build a village to incorporate them into. You can just have them with you at your base. As long as they've got a workstation to go to and a bed, you'll see them wandering around and going about their daily business. Obviously, you still need to be very vigilant of zombies so that they don't get eaten. A simple mob that I always like to have hanging around my world is a pet of some kind, whether it be a dog, cat, or parrot. Basically, one of the mobs you can make sit down. I find just having these around at a location in your world that you visit a lot is a really nice addition, and they're always happy to see you. You probably already have these in your world in order to get resources from them, but farm animals are a wonderful way to bring life to a certain type of build, like, a farm. I'm not talking about shoving 100 cows into a 9x9 fence, you can save that for your actual cow farm, but just a handful in a field roaming around. It's nice. And then there's all of the other mobs in the game you can have in your world, like the aquatic mobs you could build an aquarium for, or better yet, an underwater house so that you can look at them directly through your window. If you've got an underground house, why not bring in a couple of bats to flap around? Just be sure to put a name tag on them so they don't despawn. One of my personal favourites are bees. They add so much life to a build, and the best part is, you don't have to trap them in. As long as they've got their hive to return to, they shouldn't stray too far. And not forgetting every other mob in the game you can incorporate into your builds. Use your imagination. A very subtle way of adding some life into your world is by building with particles. There are a vast amount of blocks and items in this game that give off some kind of moving particle which will just give that little bit of movement, starting with one of the best, spore blossoms. All you've got to do is place one of these down somewhere in an area and they add an incredible amount of ambience to it. I love them. Campfires produce smoke, which of course is a great use for chimneys, but also anything else that could benefit from having smoke added to, such as placing it under a furnace to look like it's cooking. If that's maybe a bit too much smoke, then lighting a fire will have a similar effect. Not to mention the fire itself is a great use in a build and adds a lot of animation. Keep in mind you can also get the blue soul fire too. There are a ton of items that give off a small number of particles, such as end rods, brewing stands, enchanting tables, candles, ender chests, crying obsidian, the list goes on. Some of these you can just straight build with or hide behind blocks utilizing just the particles, and some like the candles are just nice to have out on display. Nether portals give off a lot of particles too, so maybe think about decorating your portal so it's more than just a bunch of obsidian and purple swirlies. If you have just one block between you and some water or even lava, you'll be able to get these dripping particles, which depending on the build could have a pretty neat effect. A cool machine that you could also build that will give off tons of particles and look amazing is an arrow fountain. Simply by using a slime block to bounce a tipped arrow up and down, it gives it the effect of a bubbling fountain. Lastly, redstone blocks often produce lots of particles such as the ore when you walk over it. But that nicely leads us on to the next topic, which, as you may be able to guess, is redstone. I am far from a redstone expert, so this section is going to be pretty simple. A lot of redstone components are toggleable in some way or another, meaning you can cause them to move, flicker, or otherwise change state. Basically creating circuits to make it look as though stuff is going on, even if it isn't. On the other hand, you can create redstone that does have a function and leave it out on display. Same goes with your farms. Having them out on show can be pretty cool to look at. Having builds you can interact with is always a good idea. In this case, you can use redstone to toggle something, like my dam here. With one flick of a lever, I can open or close it, or even my firework display that I can activate. I feel like it makes you feel a bit more connected to your world in that way. You could even link this sort of thing up to a daylight detector, then come each morning or nightfall, your redstone creation, whatever it may be, will automatically trigger. And lastly, just because I think it's funny and a lot of people probably forget you can do this, but powering a dragon head makes its mouth open and close. Now, why wouldn't you want that in your base? Next up is something that is already adding movement to your world without you having to lift a finger, and that is water. Now, of course, flowing water is naturally occurring throughout your Minecraft world, but most of the time it's probably a little bit funky looking. You can create some waterfalls or rivers yourself to give the landscape of your base a better look. Even still water is technically moving a tiny bit, but not forgetting that with soul sand or magma blocks, you can create bubbles in the water. You don't even need to build natural looking terrain with water to use it in your world. You can also build with it too. Man-made water features would be a good way to describe this, I guess. Not forgetting you can do all of this with lava too, so long as it's fireproof of course. Another one of my favourite ways of adding some activity to your world is through water pipes. Not only do they look pretty sweet, but they can also serve a function. You can connect them up to your farms and have all of the items flow through them into storage. You can do this without water too, but I just don't think it looks as good. Technically we've already mentioned this, but there are a lot more things that don't really fit into any of the other categories that still have their uses, and that is entities. Such as end crystals for example. Of course, be careful around these things, but you can't deny they do add a whole other level of grandeur to a build. Banners ever so slightly move, and just that little wave can sometimes be all you need to add. Now, though armor stands don't inherently move on their own, they can be moved using redstone or water streams, which can make for an interesting focal point in a build. Now for my favourite moving entity, the minecart. These things are brilliant, not only to ride around on as the player, but also just to have circulating around on their own, whether that be purely as a decoration, providing no use, or having them on show if you need them in a farm or machine of some kind, such as a super smelter. Seeing the minecart whip across the top is so satisfying. We'll be quick with this one, as it's pretty much just all of the miscellaneous items. Prismarine changes colour, slowly, but it does still change, which might be all the movement you want. Copper does the same, but even slower again. This one's just kinda cool to see a build age over time. Beacons can add a nice bit of movement, but I do find you need the right kind of build for it to work. I've never actually used these two, but I do still want to mention it just in case it sparks your own idea. But the Skulk Sensor and Skulk Shrieker have really cool animations. Finally, the Stonecutter itself is also animated, which can create a fun detail like this coal grinder in one of my ore refinery buildings. Now we come to the last section, which is actually not involving any moving items whatsoever, and instead is building in a way that suggests movement, as though you're frozen in time. The best example for me to use this in is in the sense of a custom village, town or city. Imagine the settlement you're creating is bustling with life, and then all of a sudden, time freezes, and the people are removed in this case. That's what you're trying to create. So this is stuff like wagons being pushed, farmland being harvested, cranes moving items, boats sailing through the water. Hopefully you get the idea. Pretty much as though all of the residents were going about their day to day when you froze time, took them away, and built it in Minecraft. This also works for other ways outside of a village setting, of course. Take my train as an example. I've tried to make it look as though it's coming into the station, and the main thing causing that is the smoke using these glass blocks. I've done a similar sort of thing with my monolith over here that has broken away from the ground and is now rising up into the air. It's not really too different to how you would paint a picture or take a photograph. As I've said, Minecraft is very static. So most of what you create is a snapshot in time. But there are ways to convey movement using regular building blocks. And then as a bonus, all of these smaller ways that we've spoken about can add just a little bit of life into your world. Thank you for watching everybody, I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.